Now, this woman here, to any real person listening to this or watching this, of which we all are, or we wouldn't be interested in these sort of topics, or you wouldn't be subscribed to this channel. You're not an NPC, you're not an organic portal. This woman comes across as pretty much the most obnoxious person you'll ever see, ever, throughout your entire life. And it's the social justice warrior type that seems to run the same script. They just play the same role. And were they all coached in the back room and they were all given lines to read and they all had instructors? No, there's just too many people in terms of what the reality wants them to do and how the reality itself wants them to act. There's too many people in on it. They, for lack of any other understanding, they must be some sort of soulless, spiritless being, no connection to higher self, whatever definition you want to place on them. Somehow they almost, for lack of a better words, get a download as to how they are to act in this reality. But once again, we have the same thing going on. All the critics, like Nerdrotic, just have no idea why these executives in these companies would intentionally piss off their fans. And I would say to them that if it happened once, okay, we can make mistakes. If it happened twice, okay. But if it's happened hundreds of times across the board, across all the major media companies and entertainment companies that put out sci-fi, similar shows, comic books, when it's happening hundreds of times across the board for years, it's no longer executives that don't understand their fans, guys. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to Nerdrotic and the clueless reviewers. It's being done on purpose. Did she go to the window and get her marching orders as to how she should piss off her fans? Maybe, but I don't think so. I think she's playing a role in running a script. Okay, I understand the old reality, the old model. It's one of the Ten Commandments, right, of the economic Bible. Well, the customer is always right, and big companies that rely on these customers are never going to antagonize their fans. I mean, this is, if there was a Ten Commandments, that would be number one, right? So if it happened once or twice with a few executives, those executives would be pulled in, like Kathleen Kennedy and Rian Johnson, the Star Wars creators who antagonize the fans and say, we're making the right movie here. The fans just don't understand. They don't understand what Star Wars is supposed to be. But they're the ones that have, they've read every single Star Wars book and they've done hundreds of hours more of research and been interested in Star Wars, much more than these executives at Disney, who's just irritating. The writer of the She-Hulk is just irritating the hell out of the comic book critics and all the comic book fans, and they just can't understand why she's putting these sorts of tweets out, tweets where she hates men and hates heterosexual relationships. They just don't get it, where you and I would say it's obviously all being done on purpose. As weird as that sounds to anybody stumbling upon this video, I don't have 10 hours to bring you up to speed. You could check us into a Motel 6 and we could do 10 hours of hardcore reality back and forth across the twin beds from each other, and then maybe you'll understand. It takes a long time. Probably takes 10 years, not 10 hours. But they just don't get it. And what we need to do is to examine what reality itself is trying to accomplish here. Because no, it's not just men and women making phone calls. Reality itself is delivering something through this microcosm that we can learn from. That for-profit companies are going out of their way to piss off their customers, which then by default means they are going out of their way to harm their own profits. And that's exactly what is happening. And the only way that can be happening is if profits are not important to these companies. And there's only a limited number of ways that could be happening. Well, how would a company like Disney or underneath Disney, Marvel, or comic book distributors like Diamond Entertainment or whatever, all these different companies, how are they not interested in profits? Well, I'm no genius. There's only one answer. They are reimbursed by the system itself to create a certain turmoil among certain groups in society. They will sacrifice their own profits to move society into a certain direction. And they're not sacrificing their profits, because I assure you, whatever they would have made, they're made whole or double or tripled by the system itself that can print up any amount of money for any reason at any time. Yes, it is troubling what's happening now, because even a system that can print trillions on a keyboard daily with no consequences, they can just bang out and inject money wherever they want to inflate the world economy after this, what we're going through now, cough 19, will, it will create a hyperinflation. Your bag of apples will become $10 at some point. Guys, I thought about it, and I think there could be something significant here we can take away from a microanalysis of the destruction, the intentional destruction of the sci-fi movie industry, comic book industry, and science fiction series like Doctor Who. Examine it close up, and we can take it away and apply it to the overhanging master reality I call Clinton backwards, or not Nilk. Now, the reality itself, best way to think about it, I've said, is just act like it's alive. I don't want to personify it and give it any energy in that regard, but that's the best way to understand it. Its minions, like Ellen or Oprah or George Bush or Henry Kissinger, they carry out the on-the-ground tactics for the master reality. Okay? It wants to reduce reality to a lower state. That's what it's continuously trying to do. So we think the world we were born into the 70s has to be the same world that exists now. Things change over time. Pop music just gets horrible, where we had the Stones and the Beatles and the grunge movement. Things just get bad, and things get warped and adulterated and bastardized, but it's still the same reality. It's still the same world. Not necessarily. All right? Not necessarily. We've heard before, everything is frequency, everything is resonance, and they try to push frequency lower and lower and lower down towards Hades. Well, I don't know what's down there, but they push it down into a lower frequency, down towards the pure 666. Reality itself can change over time. Mandela affected person doesn't roll their eyes at what I just said. So what you have happening is the Not Milk and its minions need a population of people that will go along and not cause problems in the new reality or realities as the realities get lower in frequency and get more demonic or more satanic or more degraded or more down towards the pure 666. It needs people on board the good ship Lollipop that are going to be, nice tenants in their staterooms, not causing problems and trying to cause a mutiny. So it needs to constantly separate out those that are going to go along for the ride from those like us that potentially are going to cause a lot of problems. And it's more magnified in the comic book or sci-fi industry, because most people that are involved as a fan in this industry are real people. I think this is why it's more magnified in this industry. You have to be very, very imaginative. Comic books just give you a little storyboard in one box, and a whole book can play out over just 15 pages. And you have to imagine and be, maybe only a real creative entity has the imaginative power to love a comic book, to fill in the gaps on their own, to see it unfold. Do you think an NPC type could do it? That like what you're looking at here. Why are the comic books getting bad? Because these sorts of creatures are writing them. And they're still going to be somewhat talented in their writing because they're playing that role for the master reality. But I don't think NPC or organic portal types are reading comic books or looking forward to Doctor Who, or they're looking forward to Star Wars the way it was in 1977, but they're not looking forward to the last 3 Star Wars that are laid down to kind of, who's the only people coming out of The Last Jedi or The Rise of Skywalker saying that was great? only, in my opinion, an NPC organic portal type that has no creativity, no imaginative power, has no spirit, no connection to higher self. I really think it's that simple. So in every facet of reality, it's like, let's just say there's two types of passengers on this good ship lollipop. Passengers like you and me, real beings that need a real bed, like some cushions and a spring. And there's the other type of passenger that looks human, but they lay on spiked needles. They lay on spikes and they lay on needles. That's how they sleep. And the ship is reality itself is being retrofitted with spiked needle beds. And the staterooms are being redone for the new type of passenger. And the new type of passenger is these basically people that don't think for themselves, have very little light inside them. They have no connection to higher self, somebody that potentially has no way out of here upon death. And there is no other explanation for it as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't seem like there would be any other explanation. So, in all of reality is being degraded, but only from the perspective of people like us, only from the perspective of real creative people with real light inside them. Because there's probably a lot of people that walked out of The Force Awakens and says that was pretty darn good when it was horrible. So this is happening to reality across the board. I just think it's more noticeable and more violent with the comic book industry because, probably 90% or all their customers are real people. Because I don't think you need when I was a kid, I would have these Star Wars action figures and all little plastic figures, and my mom would tell me I would be up there for hours just putting the figures together and imagining scenarios and having them talk to each other. A whole world was created with these little action figures. She said be up there for hours and hours and hours just moving these little figures around. And I don't know if everybody today has that sort of creativity. Maybe only real people. I guarantee almost everybody listening to this has similar stories. You might draw or music or paint, but I don't know if the NPC of today's world, somebody, whether they're completely designed to be or an organic portal, or they were a real person, but they lost themselves. They lost their essence to this reality. I don't think they buy comic books. So the destruction of this area, I think, in the microcosm is exactly what's happening in almost every area, at least from our perspective. But this is more violent because with the NFL, for example, putting in you can take a game that was once great and is still good, but you can still massage it so it appeals more to the organic portal. Just keep putting in technology that they understand and they relate with. Keep putting in more ways to use replay and more. It's not now 1/10 of a second, they measure to 1,000th of a second. The technology overlays the human aspect of the game. In tennis, there is no John McEnroe arguing with the refs anymore about a ball being in or out. The technology says exactly where it lands on the line. It's a dehumanization of reality across the board is what we have here. Everything, if reality and its minions can say, should we make something, you'd say, more of a human experience or more of an AI experience, a less human experience? Well, in every case, it's going towards the less human experience. And why is it doing that? It's creating a divide, like it doesn't already know who we are anyway. It knows exactly who we are, but there's constantly a further slicing and dicing of who are the real people here and who are the organic portals that are just going to be good people in the stateroom on the good ship Lollipop as it sails forth.